being a harp player, right? A lot of
Uh-huh.
times you're kind of just playing a little accompaniment, and then sometimes when you get an opportunity to just let it loose,
Yeah.
right?
Right, right, right.
So, what were some of your favorite songs or favorite sets that you did at that time?
Oh, we did the old stuff. We did, Kansas City high heel sneakers, because nobody wants to go to hell,
I prefer not to. Yeah, if I had a choice,
right?
option A or option B.
Yeah.
Walk
Yeah.
us through that process. Like, what does it typically go in a consult that when you're working with someone? How do you set those boundary lines as far as how they can anticipate you producing as an artist?
I say, here's, I'll do some sketches. They'll bring in some photos. They'll say something here. Can you do this or image, or can you do that image?
Usually, I like to give people the opportunity. Like, what's your biggest advice? Like some of the things that you'd share with a version of your younger self. Often, I like to try and have this idea of conversations with my younger self.
Patience,
Yeah.
patience, because you can't push a river, and you have to have the patience. You have to have the patience in life to let it flow.
All right. Well, thank you. I just wanted to obviously thank you for inviting us out today,
Yeah.
Granny, and giving us the opportunity to go through your art studio and show us your pieces. I greatly appreciate it. I'm hoping today that we kind of go through uh, what your passions are in relation to art, how you ended up in Park City. And then obviously I have a very big personal bias because once I found out you were a harp player and played the harmonica, that was a immediate story that I have to dive into and learn more about.
Yeah, yeah, because you're a harp player.
Yeah, well, obviously I don't have the experience that you do, but it is something that I definitely enjoy.
Yeah, but you carry it around.
Yeah, I
And that
do.
was impressive to me when somebody that, carries around the harp, they play the harp.
Yeah. So I find it fun, but I'd like to open it up. So, let's tell a little bit of the audience of just again who you are and again, kind of where we're at today. A little bit. I know we touched on a little bit of history earlier,
Right.
but if we could go back through that.
Sure, William Cranstover, and I was brought up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, moved to a little town called West Bend, went to the University of Wisconsin, majored in fine art and English, and taught for a number of years in Wisconsin and Australia, and then came to Park City in 73, 74, that ski season,
Hmm.
um, and stayed because I loved it. I love the mountains. And I really didn't care whether, at that time, I didn't really care whether it was developed or not, or a lot of people came.
That's
I
a
just
pretty
enjoyed it.
common story with Park City, right?
Yeah,
That
especially back then,
okay.
because it was such a great time.
Was there much here in
No,
73?
no. I mean, it was the mining town, still the old mining town. They're still mining. And then you had a lot of young people. It's kind of the hippie miner
Okay.
uh, delineation with those groups. But everybody got along really well.
So they were still actively mining at that time?
Yes, uh-huh.
And what
Actively
it's a
mining
silver mine, is that
silver,
primarily?
silver mining town. Yeah.
Okay.
When I first got here, I had a friend. I have a friend, Dan Kubishek, and we started a pinball arcade
Oh, here?
in Park City. Yeah, it was called the Golden Nugget Arcade, and unbeknownst to us, it was a silver mining town. But we had a ball doing it. We kept it for a couple of years, and we'd go to the bars and break open a couple rolls of quarters and
Yeah.
bought everybody a beer, and it was just a great time.
Every time you talk more and more about your history and your story, I'm like, wait a minute, what you like? I obviously grew up in the late '80s into the early '90s, and so I have so many fond memories of like coin op arcades.
Yeah,
Because it was one I got to spend time with my friends, and it was an exploding. It felt like an exploding thing. Like everywhere had to have an arcade. But beyond that, my father bowled. He bowled on men's leagues. I was an only child, so I'd go with him to all the bowling alleys.
right.
And once we're at the bowling alley, he got situated. It would be quarters to me to go entertain myself in the arcade. And it was almost like latchkey or daycare. All the kids from the bowling league would be in there.
Sure.
So I had all these regular friends that I would see at different locations depending on where my dad was bowling at.
That's cool.
Yeah, so like when you talk about arcades, it's just every time I see them, I want to go in it. I literally have a stand-up arcade in my house, like
Oh, wow.
a big full operational one that I found for a good deal. So I was, all right, I got to find a spot to put this.
That's great.
But it's wild to me that you did pinball.
We had antique machines as well.
Yeah.
We got the old machines because they're just so cool and
Yeah.
and
Like the ones with like the large flippers and stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen some of those.
yeah.
Okay.
And we had the first foosball table in the state of Utah.
Really?
Yeah. And we had foosball tournaments.
Okay.
And it was
Where was this located? On Main Street?
on Main Street, Park City. It's now it's a turquoise shop across from Terrego.
So the building's still there?
Yeah, building's still there. Old brick building.
Okay.
2 stories high. And we lived upstairs.
Okay.
And had the arcade downstairs. And then, of course, we branched off. We did different things. And I got into real estate back in 74, 70, 75, 76 and sold real estate. And because I wanted to make the most money in the shortest period of time so I could paint and ski.
Okay.
Or ski and paint. So
would you just work primarily then outside of the ski season and focus on that?
no, I'd work during the ski season as well. But if I sold a house, which is anywhere from 10,000, the houses those days was $10,000, $20,000, $25,000. 6%, is $1,800, and you split that with your broker, $900. That would last a couple of months.
Wow.
Or a month and a half. And so I'd ski and I'd paint and I'd have a ball and then I'd go back and sell something else.
Okay.
But I built it up, and I had brokerages and I had a couple of brokerages. I had a commercial brokerage and a residential brokerage because, that was in 78, 79, because I got married and I had children.
Okay.
And you go, whoa, let's make this thing happen. I mean, let's bring in the dough. And so I started doing that and things worked for me. And it was an incredible experience. Met a lot of wonderful people.
So you grew up in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I brought up the harp talk, that's what we had discussed. And you had told me at a very young age you had started playing and that you had played with a traveling band?
Yeah, I played in a traveling band. It was like Creedence Clearwater. 16, I started playing around Milwaukee and Chicago.
That's wild to me.
Yeah, it was wild. We'd go to these blues clubs and we'd play in venues and stuff. But I mean, they're bars. So a lot of whiskey flowing, a lot of alcohol and stuff. But I learned my licks there. I mean, musically and in life.
So how did you? So for me, at this point in time, just how much? Like my daughter's 14, and I just have her doing her first job. She's going to be working with us, which people are like considering it really early, but she's going to be working with me. And I see her as a 14-year-old, and you telling me as a 16-year-old, I remember what I was doing. Why is it these older generations have, like at a younger age, the amount of experience and exposure that you had versus like what my daughter's getting versus what I got? Like imagining a 16-year-old telling me they're going to go travel with a blues band and go play in Chicago and in Milwaukee.
Right. Well, you always went home. So we didn't stay on the road. We always, it was an hour's drive, hour and a half drive that you get home 2, 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
But, so we never really were on the road, but we traveled our radius.
Okay.
And there were 8 kids in my family.
Oh, wow.
I was brought up in a family of 8. And so a lot of times my parents didn't even know I was gone.
Yeah.
So,
I've heard that over and over again from people with large families that kind of plays out that way.
Yeah. I mean, and it was, you had 10 people in a household uh, 3-bedroom and 2-bath, little place, 1,500 square feet. And so I was out of that house all the time as much as I could.
Yeah. So, okay, so there was 8 children total?
Yes.
Okay, what was the breakdown in brother and sister?
4 and 4.
Okay.
I mean, well, I was one of the brothers, so 3 and 4.
Yeah.
3
Where did
brothers.
you fall in the chronological age?
I was the oldest son.
Okay.
And so I got a lot of responsibilities bringing up the younger kids. I fed them, changed their diapers.
Yeah, you're an in-house babysitter.
In-house babysitter. So, every time I can moonwalk out of the house, to go, hey, okay, I got to do this, or I got to play in the band, or, I was out.
Yeah.
So, it was a great experience, and, I enjoyed it. But it was, like I said, it was true that sometimes when I left, they didn't know that I left.
Yeah. So when I sit down with a lot of people, or often I'm hearing about like imprinting and things they picked up from their parents. And most of the people I have sat down with so far, I think the most they had was like 3 in the family. I imagine with a family of 8, it's got to be tougher to have that one-on-one time.
Yeah.
So
it was very difficult. I mean, you could always get it, but it was tough.
yeah. Well, in that time too, because I find in the kind of that one-on-one time, those quiet moments, those small moments, even if they're not necessarily long in duration, but those moments are when you instill values or you pick up things from your parents, you do that imprinting.
Mm-hmm.
So what was some of the things was that a challenge for you? And B, what are some of the things that you look back on that time period as you were growing up, that the lessons that you took away?
Well, I got a lot of lessons from my parents. Obviously, I mean, my dad was a hardworking man, and he sold advertising specialties, pens, pencils, calendars, to banks and funeral homes and things, and institutions like that. And he worked continuously, but again, always came home at night, and we always sat down for dinner. And he was an incredible man. And my mother was a hard worker. She was in home, with the kids and everything. But my impressions as far as, one-on-one stuff, it was difficult, to extract that time from them, unless it was necessary for them to sit down and give you some lessons. So a lot of my relationships, I didn't have any older brothers because I was the oldest boy, but a lot of my relationships were older guys.
Mm.
And I loved to hang around the older guys because they were my big brothers.
Yeah.
And so they instilled a lot of my formative years. And
that primarily, I would, just off of what you said already, like at that age when you were 16 playing in bands, I'm sure you picked up quite a bit then.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Everybody in the band was older than me. And then the contacts and the surrounding people that we hung out with, they're all a bit older than me. Yeah. And so I really enjoyed hanging around the older guys.
So did they have regulations and laws back then, because you were primarily working at nightclubs and bars?
Yeah, no, if I was part of the band, you're in.
You're it.
Yeah.
So exactly. Almost everyone else that was there was at least of age or of drinking age in Wisconsin at the time?
Yeah.
Was it 18 or was it 21?
It was 18.
18.
But it was Wisconsin, I mean, it's the booze capital of the world.
Okay.
I mean, and so a lot of times they just turn the other way.
Yeah.
The other way. But yeah, it was illegal. But I mean, you're in the band and they're paying you, so come on in.
Yeah.
So
what were some of the places or some of the places that you visited regularly or that you performed at regularly?
Teamsville and Thiensville. There's a couple of old bars in Milwaukee that we'd play in, and then Chicago. We were down on the streets, sometimes, around that Rush area, there were Rush Street and some of the old blues clubs and stuff that I remember playing. We had a couple of gigs in one that was maybe 4 or 5 nights that we'd go back and forth to, but I don't remember a lot of the names, but I remember the places.
Yeah. What was Chicago like back then? So I lived in Chicago starting in 2005?
So Rush Street,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
whole area,
yeah,
that whole triangle area.
yeah, for sure. Well, it's now, when I was there, it was called the Viagra Triangle area, but that was the joke at the time
Right.
because it's all the expensive sports cars and things like that get parked out in front now. And then there were some great clubs that when I was there, like Solomon's Mine and Pop Champagne and some real trendy, a little bit more upscale.
Yeah.
Solomon's Mine wasn't. There was like Catfish, deep fry kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then a guy, whoever was playing, it was wild because it's almost like, they reminded me of a church, like the way the seating was set up, like almost it felt like pew-like.
Yeah.
And then the performers would work the aisles. Like
up and down the aisle.
Yeah, they would work. They'd be off the stage and working the aisles.
Yeah,
and you have some guy like, doing his guitar like right there, and I don't know. It totally changed the environment, and it also set the precedence of like what blues is versus like what a concert or right. It was that integrated feeling.
Right. And we did a lot of cover stuff too. Okay. And we played at a lot of weddings and parties and things like that too. So it wasn't just all clubs, but we had a lot of different venues, outdoor venues and things like that around the lake.
Okay.
Lake Michigan. It was a wonderful time.
I bet. What was your favorite set, or being a harp player? Right. A lot of times you're kind of just playing a little accompaniment. And then sometimes when you get an opportunity to just let it loose.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So what were some of your favorite songs or favorite sets that you did at that time?
Oh, we did the old stuff. We did, Kansas City, high heel sneakers, midnight hour, rock and roll music. I mean, things like that.
Yeah.
And so you'd have little places where you could come in and burst in with a harp. And, but I was the lead singer as well.
Oh, really?
I was the front man. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, so the harp was a secondary little deal if you forgot the words or something.
Throw something.
Right. Right.
Oh, that's good.
You'd mix it. Anyway, yeah. I had a wonderful time. The first song I ever sang was Money.
Really?
And they say the best thing in life. Yeah. It was not Eddie Floyd. Anyway, Money was the first song that I sang, and I just I loved it. But you learn these songs off the 45s because they you couldn't pull up the words or anything. You had to actually listen to the record maybe 20 times. And
then even then, you may still get it wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to hear. Sometimes you're like, wait, what did he say?
Exactly.
There's a bathroom on the right? Wait,
right, exactly. Yeah. So, and we recorded a couple of 45s.
Okay.
Back at that time too.
Did you set up a studio or did you go to a studio?
We went to Sauk City right outside of Madison. It was a studio.
Okay.
I think it was like 3 or 4 tracks that you could, listen to. And I was in a booth. They put me in a phone booth where I sang.
So at that time, did you see like, this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, or?
I didn't. I didn't. It was when I look back on it, I'm glad I didn't, because I'd probably be dead.
Yeah.
At that, period. Because it was hard living. It was a hard life. It was a lot of drugs and booze.
Yeah.
And, you had to watch yourself, and you get wrapped up in it. But I mean, the old rockers and stuff. I mean, you can tell.
Well, I mean, some of them, it's amazing how they look now, but
a lot of,
you often hear that some of the people with the most issue or the most addiction, also are the most artistic and the most expressive.
Yeah. And a lot of that
They're
stuff.
able to tap into that.
A lot of that, a lot of the, alcohol and the drugs are always to dumb you down.
Okay.
Especially after gigs or something.
Yeah.
Because you're wound up like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so what do? Well, you go to the bar and you throw down with some whiskeys and smoke some pot. You'd go home and try to sleep.
Yeah.
So you
I
see
had,
how that could be, how that propensity could evolve into something a lot more dangerous.
yeah, I had, well, in college for myself, I worked as a door guy, just checking IDs, cleaning up, that kind of stuff at a local college bar for years. And my friends who were bartenders, I watched them slowly progress over the duration of time from having like a beer at they close up to having 5 or 6 shots to
Yeah,
having shots and then going to another thing. And it's like, yeah, and just watch them spiral out of control.
yeah, exactly.
And it was almost in every instance.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so when I look back on those days, I go, well, I'm actually really glad I got out when I did. I got into teaching and
Okay, yeah. So we're going now. Well, can we go back real quick to your father? I love talking about because this is the SGND podcast, right? And
uh-huh.
so I think a lot of this, the reason why I got inspired to start this was just for myself to even see, to sit down and have conversation, learn a little bit about others, how I identify, learn some about myself and life lessons, right?
Yeah.
Almost like what's important to pass upon to my daughters. And when you had mentioned your father, you emphasized that he was a hard worker, right? You talked about your father. Oh, he did this, he did that. That was all kind of at this level. And then you went hard worker. And then you
Mm-hmm.
went back to this level. What is it around that term, and in particular to your father, that brings out that energy in you? What does that even mean to you when you say the word hard worker in relation to your father?
Oh, just what he did, what he went through, in bringing in the bread.
Okay.
As the breadwinner. That's what I meant by that. And it just always amazed me how he could support 10 people.
Yeah.
On a little, by selling pens and pencils. And I
That's a
just,
lot of selling a lot of pens and pencils. Yeah.
right, and calendars, and I go, geez, I mean, it's absolutely incredible what he did and went through. But it all worked out. He's a World War II vet,
Hmm.
and he knew the American dream, what he wanted, and the kids. He wanted a lot of kids. So did mom. Good.
Obviously, right? It worked out.
Yeah, I mean, good Catholic family.
Okay, so that's your background is
Yeah,
Catholicism, Catholic.
Catholicism,
Okay.
and um, I said, you guys keep having kids. And that was part of the Catholic religion, I mean, you wanted to, not part of the Catholic religion, it was part of the philosophy,
Okay.
without having abortions or anything. And the birth control they said the rhythm was the rhythm control and the rhythm method. And I said, the rhythm method? I said, you out of your mind? I mean, the rhythm method must have been Ella Fitzgerald and Duke Ellington. Right?
Yeah.
Because
I haven't heard of that. The rhythm. I'm not familiar.
it was a rhythmic on the woman on your mom's
Cycles.
cycles. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, what was my point? Catholicism. Yeah, very strict Catholic upbringing. Altar boy.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had a sister who went to the convent. It was very much instilled in us. Very much instilled in us.
At a young age, obviously.
Hmm?
At a young age, obviously.
At a very young age, yeah. Which was great, because it made me who I am. I went off and I did other things. I got into Buddhism. I got into Sufism. I got into, I did crazy stuff. Werner Erhard, EST, which was pretty hip in the 70s. And
Wait, yeah, go dive into this a little bit because this is something I'm not as familiar in. So
Erhard seminar training, it was a self-awakening, woke kind of thing that Werner Erhard preached, and he had his followers, and he was like TM, transcendental meditation,
Okay.
a combination of a lot of that stuff during that time.
Yeah.
And
What time period was this? This was 70 something?
yeah, mid 70s, 75, 76.
Okay.
And,
You were stateside at this time, right? Because you had been in Australia?
yeah, I was in Australia. I was in Australia in the early 70s,
Okay.
69, 70, somewhere in there, 71. But it was a combination of a lot of different Eastern philosophies that Werner Erhard combined, and it was called EST, Erhard Seminar Training. And the one that I went to was in Aspen, Colorado. I went up there with a dear friend of mine whose name was Fantasy. It got his name after that Stevie Winwood song, Mr. Fantasy, Dear Mr. Fantasy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I regress. But it's, so getting back to Catholicism, which I did, probably in the 80s, late 80s, it was comfortable.
Okay.
So I fell back into it again, and I practice it to this day.
Okay.
So again, it was one of those things that I'm really, really grateful for. That I had that backup and that stability.
Yeah.
As far as faith goes.
Yeah. Faith always seems to come up when I sit down with people, and my background is very limited in it as far as organized religion, because my parents had been involved actively in the church, kind of similar to what you talked about. They weren't Catholic; they were Protestant and Lutheran, I believe, and they chose not to expose me to the church and that kind of deal. I find myself saying this over and over again, but the thing that's interesting to me is that I had some experiences that gave me like a faith and like a belief in that there's this connectedness in people, and there's in everything. I believe that everything that we exist and interact with has some form of consciousness. Otherwise it wouldn't be here in this existence. That's my personal belief.
Yeah.
And I came to that through some tragedy, through some trying times. And I didn't have that rooted faith belief system before then. I just was, I guess, an atheist or something like that. And then when those things happened to me, it was like I got tapped into it.
Yeah.
And now, regardless of what anyone says, like, it's not about my opinion for me personally. I know this to be true. And so I'm always interested in the things that fulfill that. And then I'm always interested in how people had found that faith for themselves,
right,
or have that grounding.
Sure.
And there's a night and day difference when you interact with individuals who have some form of grounding, regardless of what it is, if it was Buddhism or if it was EST, right?
Right.
And the comfortability they have with life and themselves often. Not everyone's always perfect, but versus someone who feels disconnected from that.
Yeah, it's got to be very difficult for them.
I've just seen it in
so have I.
Interaction.
So have I. It's not pretty sometimes.
Yeah.
And religion is all pretty much universal. It's pretty much all the same.
Mm.
As far as a higher being, and we're all connected. Mm. And it all has to do with this all encompassing love. It's that basic theory that brings us together as one.
Right. Well, and I think the reason why a lot of people seem to get pushed away from it, and why I was as well when I was younger, is because of the concentration becomes identifying which tribe you're in, and identifying the differences between the tribes, right, and then establishing, if you want to be in this tribe, you have to act this way, as opposed to what you just said. Yeah, exactly. And that's why, unfortunately, religion gets a bad rap because of that, because of those differences. And a lot of people don't see the bigger picture. They don't get it, basically, what we're all striving for. Yeah. And it's more of the tribe mentality. And if you aren't cut out of this cloth, then, you aren't going to make it. Who has a better plan? Right. Who has a better plan for this, life? Where do you think, so just from your life experience at this point in your life, you've obviously had a lot more life experience than I have. Where do you think that comes from, that need to do that from people and groups?
Oh, I think there's a lot of insecurity. A lot of insecurity, a lot of pride, and a lot of ego.
And that clouds what the intent is, this idea of love and this universal connection.
Right. Who's right and who's wrong?
Yeah. Why is that so important?
Because everybody, wants to, because everybody wants to be right. Nobody wants to be wrong.
Yeah.
And if it has to do with getting to a spiritual place, they want to be on that train.
Hmm.
And so they want to be right. They want to make that, they want to buy that ticket to get on that train to go to the right place.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, and so it's a big weight on people, because nobody wants to go to hell.
I prefer not to, yeah. If I had a choice,
right?
Option A or option B.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just that, and then it becomes divisive. It's like the ultimate game almost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
it is, yeah.
if you don't live and do the things the way in which I say, you're on the wrong team, the wrong tribe, and you're going to spend eternity being tortured.
Yeah.
There's some kind of universal agreement to that, where it's
right.
like, you either do what we say, and different religions have different cutouts for that. In Catholicism, there's restrictions, and then obviously other religions, there's major restrictions. And so when I look at religions overall, practice religions versus the idea of faith and like you talked about, this universal idea of one and this notion of love that's somehow you get tapped into at different points in time. But like, why do we have to do that? And it's just, and that's why I ask you, just because of the life experiences and the things you've gone through and going through some different religious phases and having some different experiences, what your perception of.
Yes. Well, I found out a long time ago that you can't judge. You can't judge, another person's religion. You can't judge another person for what they believe in or what they do. Because it's not how it works. That judgment, and as soon as you start judging and stuff, I mean, you get that negativity going on, and that will spiral down. I mean, that's one of those things that'll take you down too, judgment.
Yeah.
And so you have to be wide open to everything.
And
you still have your belief system.
Yeah. You'd still be who you are.
And still be who you are.
And be willing to be accepting of others.
Exactly, yeah. And be accepting of others. But be who you are. Give everybody the grace of God. Open up. Let them run. Let the big dog run. And be who they are.
I think, too, that, like, there's a part of that we're fighting our own nature, right? There is, when people talk about biases or talk about different interaction, there's a reason why you have that. And it's because you would identify a snake on the ground and avoid it. Or you could tell something was a predator versus potentially friendly. And so then we use these markers of how people dress and interact to tell us that, right? There's a reason why someone for Halloween dresses up and as a biker and puts on black leather and chains and wants to have fake tattoos and a shaved head. And it's about portraying that aggressive nature, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about, like, you don't tell them to dress up like a biker and they pick a floral jacket and plastic jewelry. And so my point, I guess I'm trying to get to, is there's something that it seems we're always working against as well. It's not only if you have an intent, but it's almost you have to remind yourself that you have that you have this natural bias or reaction to being judgmental, because it's just a part of whatever survival system we got here with.
Yeah.
And we're still carrying that with us. So then when you have these conversations with people that are different than you, you have to be consciously aware that you're bringing that. And when you're consciously aware of it, then you can try to mitigate it as best you can.
Yeah.
And actually be accepting of people, but still maintain your position.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you know who you are. Yeah. And have that confidence.
That's a hard thing, to know who you are. That's a big statement.
Well, it's a real big statement, and it goes on until you drop over dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like being an artist. You just don't go, okay, I'm an artist. Yahoo. I won. I'm an artist.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to stop here is a continuous process.
That's literally what I was going to bring up. Is you had brought that point up too, that
Yeah,
you're evolving through your process of art, even
yeah,
at this stage of the game.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm involved. I'm evolving all the time, and it's a life. It's life experiences too. It's what we do in life that we evolve, and it's like being in the studio every day,
Yeah.
walking through life. You always have to look at it like a painting or like a puzzle or like you need to do this or you have to do this, and all these judgment calls that you have to make during life. It's all part of the growth process.
Okay.
When you look back and somebody asked me, they said, do you have any regrets? And I said, yeah, I have a lot of regrets. They're all life lessons as well. So those regrets aren't necessarily regrets. They're life lessons.
Yeah. I know often when I think about things, people ask me, or you talk to someone about how you do stuff differently. But when I think about it, I'm like, oh, I'd prefer this have not to have happened. But then I also realize it's put me right where I am, and I'm not dissatisfied with where I am.
No, but it could have happened. Maybe it could have happened somehow else, some other way. Yeah. Maybe it could have happened some other way, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And so, those regrets should be far and few in between, I think.
So, all right. So we went from being 16, playing in some nightclubs,
To
right?
religion.
To religion.
Yeah.
Right. But for you and your journey, you ended up in Australia. You got to tell me how you ended up in Australia. So you had a draw to go out there. You talked about that you had the opportunity to be a teacher out there.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? The Australia in
It was
the late
incredible.
60s?
Yeah, late 60s, early 70s. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. It was an incredible spot. And it really, that was a growth spurt for me because I was in my 20s, early 20s.
Yeah.
19, 20, 21. And I was alone and I immigrated there. I actually immigrated there. And so I lived in a tent for about 10 days while they processed me. But I made friends along the way, but I made these friends and it opened up to who I was as well because I was alone. How I reacted to these people. This is my growth period as well. And father figures, yeah, I had those guys too. And I had mothers there, I had sisters there, and I had brothers there. I had some really good friends there that took me in.
You can almost kind of, when you go to somewhere that's unknown, you get the opportunity to kind of rebrand or become whoever you want. Yeah.
Yes, you do. And a lot of times you don't have a choice. You have to be who you are. You got to be who you are because people will find out. It's one of those things where you have to actually be honest with yourself, with other people. And it was terrifying sometimes also because you could feel different types of energy, but you didn't know how to deal with it because you're young, you're still young, and so it's like, playing in the blues bar when you're 16, you kind of know who's the good guy or the bad guy. And so those were real life experiences as well, finding out, but it brought out again who you were and how you reacted to those people.
Yeah.
And so it was a growth period. It was a great, wonderful growth period. There were times where I experienced some things that I did have regrets. And I remember being on the beach one time and I had a guy come up to me and asked me if I wanted to go to dinner with him. And we went to his house, had a great time, had a wonderful house, lots of chandeliers. And it turns out he was gay. And when I found that out, I was absolutely terrified. I turned and I said, thanks. I got to go. I was absolutely terrified. And to this day, I feel bad about that kind of the way I moved, the way I moonwalked out of the house saying, I'm out. I got to go, I was terrified. And I look back at that experience and I can still see his face going, we don't have to have sex, I can still be gay. We can be pals. yeah, those kind of experiences that you learn along the way.
Yeah. Well, that was also a different, it's significantly different time for that too, right?
Oh, it's yeah, completely different time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Australia at that time more liberal in that regard?
No, quite the opposite.
Okay.
Yeah, quite the opposite.
What other interesting, like, cultural differences did you experience? Because there's not as much, I would assume, not as much exposure between the two cultures like there is now. It's like you could pick up a mobile phone and get a really good idea of what Australia is like.
Yeah,
Whereas at the time period in which you immigrated there, right,
yeah.
that was not the case. So what were some of the things that were the biggest adjustments for you when you arrived there?
I think just, uh, getting into the Australian people, who they were, and the colloquialisms, different speech patterns, different expressions, which I really, one of my regrets again is that I didn't write these things down, like fair dinkum, an expression which meant, all is a good mate,
Okay.
of the world, and all these wonderful expressions that the Australians had. Um,
What was that? Fair dinkum?
fair dinkum.
Fair dinkum?
Yeah. And, it was a wonderful time because it was, obviously they spoke English, but it was a different language to me, a lot of it,
Yeah.
and I wish I would have gotten in more into the Aboriginal art and the people because it was a fascinating, fascinating community,
Mm.
the Aborigines. Um, and I wish I would have spent more time studying their art because it was basic and primitive and cool.
So, but at this point in your life, now you went from school, did you go to university then for art major?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what point did that occur in this timeline? Were you already an art major by the time you went out to Australia?
Yes. Yeah. I
Okay.
graduated as an art major, English and art.
Okay.
I taught English and art.
Oh yeah, because you were a teacher out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then now we're bringing it back to Park City
Yeah.
when you opened up the pinball shop,
Right. Golden Nugget
which I'm
Arcade.
still blown away by. That's awesome.
Golden Nugget.
Then you went into the real estate.
Got into the real estate, raised a couple of kids.
Okay.
Uh,
How did you do real estate for some time then?
I did real estate. I still do real estate. I still practice real estate, and I have a good. I have an appraisal firm,
Okay.
and I'm a broker, associate broker with Berkshire Hathaway, and so I still do deals, and I still do a couple of appraisals, and you know, uh, because it's an old habit,
Yeah.
and because it's a nice pop every once in a while. It's a good time to make some dough.
Well, I would assume with the property value changes and stuff in and around this area, it's got to be significant.
Yeah, it is. And so you always keep that license hanging on the wall.
Okay. What does that require of you?
42 hours of classwork every 2 years.
Okay.
But I always told my kids to keep your day job too. You met one of my girls, Malia.
Yeah.
My other daughter, Asia, is in Salt Lake. And then both of them are wonderful artists. But I always told them, keep your day job. Always keep your day job because that painting of that sheep might not sell.
Yeah.
And so you aren't going to be able to pay the mortgage. You aren't going to pay your car payment. So keep your day job so you've got something coming in. And then you have the freedom to knock out anything and do or paint anything you want without somebody saying, I want this, and this. You can do what you want.
So you don't become handicapped or handcuffed to commission pieces.
Yeah, you don't have the golden handcuff.
That's tough. That's got to be essentially the opposite of what an artist wants to do, right?
Yeah.
You want to get in that zone. You want to find that flow. You want to just be expressive.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're trying to be expressive within this well-defined box.
Exactly.
It's tough to do.
Exactly. It's a tough tightrope to walk.
Yeah. But
because you got the money end of it and you got your expressive side of it.
Yeah.
How do you combine those? Well, let's try to do both.
I was going to say, you've had some success with that though, right? You found that at this stage, especially this stage in your life, that you've been able to work with clients about pieces like that, and they understand who they're working with, like that. You're This is how you're going to produce it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you can give me the guidelines.
Yeah.
Walk us through that process. Like, what does it typically go in a consult that when you're working with someone? How do you set those boundary lines as far as how they can anticipate you producing as an artist?
I say, here's, I'll do some sketches. They'll bring in some photos. They'll say something here. Can you do this or image, or can you do that image? A lot of times they'll see it on the website and I can reproduce, come close to reproduction, but they want something different. It's a collaboration. It's constant communication. You want to communicate, not necessarily, do you like this? Do you like this? What are your colors? How do you see this? How do you envision this? How do you feel about this? So you get a sense of it. And my only caveat is, yeah, it's great, it's wonderful, but it's going to look nothing like this, because it won't. It'll be my style, it'll be my painting.
Yeah.
And then if you like it, great. If not, we can change it, or, we don't have to do it. But it's going to be my style. It's going to be my recognizable style. And then if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, it's fine.
That's what I was going to say, is I would assume that people are coming to you at this point because they know either through referral or seeing your other art or seeing your other work.
Exactly. A lot of it's referral. And a lot of it's with designers also. And in working with designers are great because they know what they want. They know the size and the color.
Okay.
And typically the composition as well. So it's great. It's working with them it's fun.
Well, you're in an area too that is blown up so much, and in particular with a lot of higher value homes that will be looking to decorate them with artwork, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of these homes have the pretty basic colors, your beige and your grays and neutral colors.
That's definitely been the transition that I've seen, right? It used to be much more rich in wood,
right,
and the deeper tones. And then now it's transferred over to that more neutral palette.
Contemporary.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of look. And so, my pieces fit in there quite well.
Well, it's got to be a lot of color and contrast.
Yeah, exactly. It's the feng shui. It's the fire.
Okay.
It's the fire that will make it pop.
Okay. So let's go back to the family. So you come back stateside, you go through the pinball. I just want to repeat the pinball, but anyway, you go through the pinball. You get into the mortgage, or you get into
family.
Yeah, and then the family and the girls. You have two girls?
2 girls.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in their early 40s. And they're wonderful girls, and they've traveled around the States, but they always came back here. They always came back to Park City. One's in Salt Lake and one's here, Malia. And they're great girls, and I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with them over the years. It's been great.
Okay. And so what was your story then? You met your wife at the time, or?
I met my wife in 78. My first wife, my girl's mother, in 78. We were married up until early 90s. And then I ran wild for a while till I met my second wife, Stephanie Evans. And we've been together about 13 years.
Okay.
And she is my soulmate. She's the one. You know how you wait for people? And all of your other relationships are just kind of stepping stones.
I was going to say, I think I'm in that period. At least I hope I am.
Yeah. That's good. And so, a lot of the relationships you've had prior to those was the result of the relationship you have now.
Yeah.
And me too.
I'm hoping to meet that person. That's what I'm saying is I went through, so like you can write my story in my relationships.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So again, like graduating from college, met one individual, and then that started to dissolve, and then met another individual, and I moved to Chicago, and then met another individual, and I moved to Utah. It's like it was written that way. And now here I sit single with the 2 girls.
Got it.
So,
all right. Yeah. So you got another stone or two.
Yeah.
To step on.
I'm hoping it's just one last one. Because I'm at that point where it's difficult for me to, because I would bring someone into my family, like with my girls.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't have two daughters with one wife. I had one daughter, and then I never had a relationship really with her mother. And then I was married and said to myself, I came out to Utah, so I wanted to provide all this stuff for my daughter.
Perfect.
And I wanted to provide her also in the family because my family's in Ohio and Florida, and I'm by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I found someone who seemed like a good pairing, and all my thought was like, okay, I need to settle down. I need to have a family. I need to give my daughter a solid foundation so we can start. Because it was like Christmas. Oh, well, why don't you come over here since you don't have any family? Thanksgiving, why don't you come over here? Oh, it's my family, my uncle-in-law's birthday, so she's going to go do this instead of be with you. So I was constantly losing my daughter because it was always about the family.
Sure.
And so my mind, it became like, I need to have a family.
Yeah.
And that's why I ended up being married and having my other daughter. And I found out through doing that and pursuing that, it obviously wasn't the right thing for me. So now I sit as a single father with a 5-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Wow, you got your hands full, man.
Yeah. And it's not idyllic, I guess, the way you draw it out, but I wouldn't give it up.
No, no, you can't.
Yeah.
And no, you can't for sure. But those relationships, you'll have another relationship, and you'll fall into some relationships that you realize that you're meant to be here at this time, at this moment for this person. And it's a wonderful feeling. I got lucky. I mean, I was 60, 62, something like that when we got married.
Yeah.
And
That's late on in life to get married.
Yeah. But I tell you what, I don't know if it would have worked. We talked about this. I don't know if it would have worked if we would have met earlier. So timing's everything.
Yeah.
It's key. Timing and lighting are key.
Right from an artist, huh?
That's right.
Yeah.
So, you really have to have the combination and the luck.
So, as a single father right now and the stuff that I go through, I like to talk and bring up the point of like what you learned going through a divorce period and how that impacted your girls. And then you had a period where you had some fun, and then it sounds like you eventually, much later on, resettled. So, thinking back on that time, where sometime in the 90s now, right, when you experienced that separation, and with the two girls, how did you man? How old were they at the time? Were they teens?
They're 9 and 10, I think.
Oh, 9 and 10.
9 and 10. So they're young, and it was a difficult time. It was a difficult time for me, and I didn't spend the time on them that I should have. The amount of time that I should have spent with them.
What were you pursuing at the time?
Booze, women. Pretty much. And I was angry.
Yeah.
I was very angry. And so I it was all about me. When I look back on those that time period, a lot of it was embarrassing. But I came through it, and thank God they turned out to be great kids. I mean, their mother was great, as far as their upbringing, and so it all worked out. But there were a lot of things I shoulda, coulda, didn't do. Just in the time that I missed and wasted. All the good times I had wasted having good times. That's an old Eric Burdon song. Anyway, it was a tough time for me, and I handled it badly, I guess is what I'm saying. But they've forgiven me, and we have an excellent relationship now.
Yeah,
and it's time. It's just time that heals.
So that's like a testament to that even if it doesn't go the way you think, or ideally it should go, there's still opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and again, lessons. No,
And maybe it was just the timing for you in particular in relation to your daughters as well.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And the lighting.
And the lighting. Yeah, right.
Yeah, because I had a period, I was pretty upset because I grew up from a family, I was an only child. And in an area where it's like that's what people did. They found my parents were 18 and 19 when they were married, and they stayed
Wow.
married. They're still married.
Wow.
They do their stuff. They've got their routines. Like,
Yeah.
but so when I had met my daughter's mother and we started dating, and then she told me she was pregnant, I was like, oh, okay, this is it. Like I was 20, 28, 29.
Got a
For
family.
me, yeah, for me, it was late. It was
Yeah.
late in life. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is kind of later in life. I could do this. All my friends that I grew up with in the area all had kids already or at least had babies for sure. And they were married. And so I thought like, okay, this is now going to be my wife and we're going to play house together.
Yeah.
And then she informed me like 3 weeks later that her father was coming to town and moving her back to Utah. And yeah, so you can imagine that was pretty much my reaction. And I was trying to process it because we went from where we were going to be moving in together, where she informed me she was pregnant, to where she was moving back to Utah.
But you weren't married.
No. Yeah, we were just dating. And I was kind of like, wait, that's not how this is supposed to work. Right. And then I went through this period where now I'm living in Chicago. She left. I helped her pack up and just kind of in awe. Just
why did Dad want her to move to Utah?
Well, I found out later that it had to do with them having so much fear of her being born in the or in Illinois and in Chicago, and that she would be stuck there. So the family pretty much did everything they could to like convince her to move back, type deal. All kinds of like, yeah.
Did her parents live out here?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So she was from Utah.
Yeah.
She was in Chicago for a short period of time. We started dating. She became pregnant, and then her family said, "Oh, you got to come." Or that's part of the story that I've been.
Yeah, yeah.
And I knew that from when her father. I mean, we were very amicable. At the time, they didn't have any problem with me. It was the first time I had really met him. Right? And hey, I'm helping you pack your daughter up so you can move her back. But so, point being, when you talk about being angry, I was incredibly angry, and I was in Chicago and well connected with all kinds of people at nightclubs. So I would go out regularly till 4 a.m., 5 a.m. and yeah.
That's what you did.
But I only did it for a short period of time and then kind of became burned out of it. And I had this point where where they had actually moved back out after my daughter was born and lived with me for like 6 months. And then I was like, okay, here we go. This is the chance to do it. And then she left again. And it was a lot of the family calling and saying like, oh, you should be at this. You should be doing this. You should be doing this. And that was my impression of it. And then that really set me over. And it was just like, that's when I started to like mentally break down because I was excited to be a dad.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a father. I wanted to have a family. Like this is what I thought was like the next step of who I was.
Yeah.
And when that was taken away from me, it was like, that's when I started to really have these breakdowns and really go into a really hard spot. But because of going through that, like something broke in me. Like I got so upset and so distraught about who I was and what I thought I was and how things were going to be that something broke in me. And when that thing broke, I became a better person.
Yeah.
I started to look at myself, the faults, the things, the way I was doing things, and made a conscious choice to like not be that anymore. Like I let that part of me essentially die.
Yeah. It took me a while, but yeah, eventually my inner child died. And my bad inner child. And you let it go and you forgive yourself.
Yeah.
And again, it's part of those life lessons, we have to go through and we need to experience. And that's why, judging someone, who don't walk in your shoes, it's not a good thing to do. You don't know what kind of train they're riding.
Yeah.
You don't know what kind of path that they're on. But it worked out. And as far as I'm concerned, in knowing you for the short period of time that I have, You got a pretty good road in front of you. You got a very good road in front of you.
See, all I could do is keep moving forward, right?
Move forward. You're creative. You know, you've got gals knocking on your door.
Hmm.
I mean, it'll take, how long it's going to take, those stepping stones. Thank God they were there.
Yeah.
You're going to be fine.
I think that's part of this journey in the process for me as well, is going through this and doing this podcast and doing these sit down interviews. Is I realize, one, it's partially obviously therapeutic for me in going through this process because I get the opportunity to sit down and learn and hear your story and then relate to it. But then two, it's like I'm working on trying to provide a space for people, like for you to be able to just be yourself
Yeah,
and
thank
talk
you.
about,
Yeah,
right?
thank you. Sure, yeah.
And and so in doing that, that's where it goes back to this idea of non-judgmental, like you keep bringing up, is that that's really what I want to be better at doing as a person. And I think if people out there can see this and identify with that, then they can bring some of that to the next conversation that they have.
One person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure.
And so that's a lot of my hope, is that by doing this, by what I consider it's not easy, by putting in the work to make
No,
this happen.
no, but like you said, it's therapeutic, and it's therapeutic for anybody and for everybody.
Yeah.
So, you're not alone in this uh, little cocoon, that we're all in. Uh, you're going to be fine. It'll all work out. It all works out. It's all part of the plan.
Is that what you just found over time at this stage in your life?
Pretty much have given it up, yeah, and given it up, and I'm not really all in control.
Hmm.
I truly do give it up, and I give it up to a higher being. I let it go, and I don't push as hard as I want, used to push, and just don't care a lot about people might say or do, or I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable in my skin.
Being cranny.
Yeah, yeah. I've become comfortable in the last 10 years. I feel good about where I am and what I've accomplished, what I've done, and the people that I've met, the people that I love.
Is that also something you feel that needs to be earned, or is that something that just turned on like a switch?
I think it's both. I think earned is a strong word. I don't know if earned is the right word. I think that the switch needs to be turned on, but that switch is turned on from the energy that you get going through this life, and making those decisions. I think that's when eventually the switch is going to be turned on. Won't be just trying so hard. And I think the less you try, the easier it becomes. That's when I say, I don't care about what people do. I just don't try as hard, as far as that kind of energy. I'm comfortable with it. I'm comfortable where I am. Do I have a lot of money? No, I don't have a lot of money. But I'm comfortable.
Hmm.
I have enough. That's what I have. I have enough. That's all I need.
So when did that become your pursuit? Did that start like 10 years ago, to where you started to understand that?
No, it was a process. It was I just threw out 10 years because I just thought I'd make a guess at it. But it was always happening.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't a time frame. You feel it gradually, and more comfortable about uh, your mortality.
Hmm.
And because of that, the little things, and they're all little things, that old expression. And as long as you're doing the right, you feel as though you're doing the right thing, and you have the energy, the right kind of energy to pursue what you want to do, and that path that you're on, you feel comfortable with it. Don't push the river. You know, people always try to push the river. You can't push the river. You have to let it flow. And I think you're doing that. I think you're doing that really well, actually. From, again, the little time that I've known you, I've
Yeah.
talked to you,
Yeah.
you know, you're on a good path.
Hmm.
Don't push the river.
I was gonna say, what usually I like to give people the opportunity, like, what's your biggest advice? Like some of the things that you'd share with a version of your younger self. Often I like to try and have this idea of conversations with my younger self. What are some of the things that you'd tell either your younger self or really for you, kind of in your almost in your 40s, right? Because there was a lot of change that occurred
Oh,
around
yeah.
that time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is there anything, or is there?
Patience,
Yeah,
patience. And that has to do, that has to do again with not pushing the river, which is an expression that I love because you can't push a river. And you have to have the patience. Uh, you have to have the patience in life to let it flow. You have to have, you have to let it go. You have to let things go.
it's probably the toughest thing to do.
It's real tough to do, especially when you're comfortable with it. When
Yeah,
you're comfortable with those situations, and they are good situations, you got to let it go. Otherwise, another door is not going to open.
I've seen that
Yeah,
over and
many,
over again.
yeah, many doors will open when you start letting things go.
But it's always that fear of the unknown that keeps you from taking the action, and then the action it never comes to you because you're saying because you're not responding, you're not giving it an opportunity, you're not clearing the space, right? Clearing the
Yeah,
space for something new to actually take that
yeah,
space.
clear off the shelves, put some more, new clothing, hang some new sweaters up, clear it out.
Hmm.
It's always good.
Nice.
Change, change is as good, if not better, than a vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be tough.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, nobody said it'd be easy. I mean, it's not supposed to be easy. And then you just don't enjoy the easy parts or the good parts, right?
Right. Man, thank you so much for today.
Thank you, brother.
This was a great
Yeah,
experience.
thank you. It was
Um,
fun.
we really appreciate the opportunity. Viewing your beautiful studio again out here in Pioa, Utah,
Downtown
right?
Pioa,
Yeah.
right downtown Pioa.
What's the official name of your studio?
It's the Kranstover Gallery.
Okay.
And I called it the Texture Gallery when I first started out. But I put my name on it when I
Okay.
felt comfortable enough,
Yeah.
right?
How long ago? Wait, you opened this 15 years ago?
Yeah, I think I leased it for about 8 years. I bought it about 5, 6, 7 years ago, somewhere in there, because I had to have it. And
Just
it's
the energy in here? Or
yeah, yeah, and come out here and create, play music. I walk around and play the harp. I turn on the blues channel and I'll play the harp. But it was fun. Thank you.
yeah, this is a
Thank
good
you.
good use of time, man. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
again, thank you for sitting down with us today, Cranny. I've picked up so much, learned so much, and obviously being exposed to your artwork and your background in history. And it's funny you talk about that you learned so much from some of the older guys and you modeled a lot of that. Obviously, I took away a lot that you shared here today, and so that had an impact on me and hopefully those who are out there watching this as well in the future.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that means a lot.
You deserve it. I mean,
Thank you.
that's yeah, you deserve that for sure. Um, but if people do have an interest in coming to visit you again, you're out in
Yeah.
Pioa. You're at
Right.
the Cranston Gallery,
Kranstover Gallery. Right.
Cranstover
Yep.
Gallery. Okay,
Yep.
excellent.
Yep.
S-
Middle of downtown Pioa.
So if you're ever in the Park City area and you want to get away for a little bit from just being in that downtown kind of traffic that ends up happening there, and you're someone who's in the arts or interested in culture and the history of the area, um, look up the gallery and come out here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. It was a treat.
And then, yeah, we'll see you in the future.